My mother slapped her hand onto my dining table, demanding I transfer $15,000 immediately to cover my sister Chloe's dream wedding venue. She looked me in the eye and said, "You're the responsible daughter, so you'll fix this." When I flatly refused, she didn't just yell. She sneaked into my hallway desk, stole my emergency credit card, and attempted to drain my life savings to pay the deposit behind my back. But instead of crying, I actually couldn't stop laughing. Because what my mother didn't know was that the account she accessed wasn't connected to my money at all. It belonged to a business trust fund tied directly to Chloe's fiancé's wealthy family. The next morning, my phone rang. It was Chloe, hyperventilating and panicking on the line, screaming that her mother-in-law had just canceled the wedding and called the police. "My name is Clara, I'm 27 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the designated responsible one in my family. While my younger sister, Chloe, was treated like a fragile princess who could do no wrong, I was the daughter expected to keep my head down, work hard, and clean up everyone else's mess. I worked tirelessly as a financial coordinator to build a stable life, saving every single dollar so I'd never have to rely on anyone. That peace shattered on a rainy Tuesday evening when my mother, Brenda, barged into my apartment unannounced. She didn't even take off her coat before slamming her purse onto my dining table. "Clara, we have an emergency," she declared, her voice trembling with theatrical panic. She explained that Chloe's dream wedding venue was threatening to cancel because a massive $15,000 deposit was due in less than 24 hours. They were short on cash, and Chloe was apparently in tears. Before I could even process the number, my mother looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're the responsible daughter with savings, so you need to transfer the money to my account right now. You'll fix this." I stared at her in utter disbelief. Chloe was marrying Marcus, a guy from an extremely wealthy family, yet my mother was expecting me to gut my hard-earned emergency fund for an extravagant party. I took a deep breath, looked my mother in the face, and gave her a firm, unyielding answer. "No." When I said no, the air in the room instantly turned hostile. My mother's face twisted into a mask of pure fury. She called me selfish, cold-hearted, and accused me of trying to ruin my own sister's happiness out of pure jealousy. But I didn't budge. I stood my ground, repeating that my savings were off-limits. Realizing her verbal attack wasn't breaking my resolve, her demeanor suddenly shifted. She let out a heavy, dramatic sigh, wiped a forced tear from her eye, and apologized. "I'm just so stressed, Clara," she murmured softly. "Can I please just have a glass of water before I drive home?" I felt a slight pang of sympathy, so I walked into the kitchen to fill a glass. That was my crucial mistake. While my back was turned, my mother quietly slipped into my hallway home office desk. She opened the top drawer where I kept my professional documents and high-security banking cards, swiped a premium black card, and casually walked out the front door before I even brought the water back. It wasn't until 2 hours later that my phone started buzzing relentlessly with automated fraud alerts. $5,000 attempted at a luxury bridal boutique. $10,000 attempted at an upscale oceanfront estate. My mother had actually stolen from me. But as I sat on my couch looking at the notification details, panic didn't set in. Instead, a slow, cold realization washed over me, followed by a shock of disbelief. My mother had taken the wrong card. In her desperate rush, she hadn't swiped my personal credit card. She had stolen an executive credit card I managed as an authorized power of attorney coordinator for a massive real estate trust, a trust fund that belonged directly to Marcus's wealthy family. I sat in the quiet dark of my living room, staring at the glowing screen of my phone. The bank alert was still flashing, demanding confirmation for a high-value transaction that breached standard security protocols. My mother had no idea what kind of trap she had just walked into. She thought she was being clever, using my position and access to force my hand, assuming I'd be too terrified of family conflict to report the charge. What she failed to understand was how high-tier corporate trust accounts actually work. A $15,000 transaction flagged on a private wealth management card doesn't just generate an automated text message to a mobile phone. It instantly alerts the primary account trustee. And in this case, the primary trustee was Eleanor, Marcus's formidable, sharp-witted mother, who monitored every cent moving through her family's real estate empire. Within minutes, my professional phone buzzed. It was an urgent flag from the bank's fraud prevention division, confirming that a secondary card assigned to my management portfolio had been flagged for unauthorized physical swipe attempts across town. I knew I had a choice. I could call the bank, try to cover for my mother, and scramble to fix her mess like I had done my entire life. Instead, I took a deep breath, unlocked my tablet, and tapped the screen. I confirmed to the fraud department that the charges were completely unauthorized, strictly flagged the card as stolen, and authorized the bank to initiate standard corporate fraud measures. I locked my personal accounts, poured myself a cup of tea, and waited for the morning. My mother's greed had set off a ticking time bomb, and I was going to let it detonate. At exactly 7:15 the next morning, my phone began ringing uncontrollably on my nightstand. The caller ID flashed my sister Chloe's name. When I answered, there was no polite greeting, just the sound of ragged, hyperventilating sobbing. Chloe was crying so hard, she could barely choke out her words, screaming that her whole life was falling apart. The wedding venue had just canceled their hold, and the entire event was ruined. "Clara, you have to fix this," she wailed, her voice shrill with panic. Marcus's mother called us an hour ago in a rage. She said someone tried to steal $15,000 from her family's corporate trust card last night, and she's already at the police station filing grand larceny charges. I sat up in bed, keeping my voice completely level. "And why are you calling me about that, Chloe?" "Because Mom told me you gave her that card," Chloe screamed back, her tears turning into sharp fury. "She said you authorized her to use your work account to pay our deposit, but now Eleanor says it was stolen. Why would you give Mom a stolen card, Clara? You're going to send our mother to prison." I let out a slow, heavy breath, refusing to let her shift the blame onto me. "Chloe, listen to me very carefully," I said, cutting through her hysterics. "I never gave Mom that card. She came to my apartment, demanded my savings, and when I said no, she snuck into my home office, opened my desk, and stole it out of my drawer. She committed bank fraud and identity theft. I didn't set anyone up. Mom did this entirely to herself." There was a dead, suffocating silence on the other end of the line as the reality finally began to sink into Chloe's head. By 2 p.m., we were all gathered in a cold, quiet conference room at Eleanor's corporate attorney's office. The atmosphere was thick with tension. My mother sat on one side of the mahogany table, looking pale and disheveled, while Chloe sat next to her, red-eyed and trembling. Eleanor sat opposite them with her lead legal counsel, looking every bit the formidable businesswoman she was. I took a seat at the head of the table, remaining completely calm. My mother immediately launched into her defense, wiping away forced tears. "This is all a terrible misunderstanding," she sobbed, pointing a shaking finger at me. "Clara gave me that card. She told me it was a special family allowance card for the wedding. She set me up because she's always been jealous of Chloe." Eleanor didn't even blink. She simply nodded to her attorney, who turned on a large wall-mounted monitor. "Mrs. Brenda, that story would be far more convincing if we didn't have full security footage," the lawyer said calmly. On the screen, high-definition hallway footage from my apartment building played clearly. It showed my mother entering my place and 20 minutes later, slipping out while hastily shoving my black corporate keycard into her coat pocket. The color completely drained from my mother's face. The room fell into dead silence. Her lies had completely collapsed under the weight of indisputable proof, leaving her sitting there with no excuses left. Eleanor leaned forward, her voice icy cold. "You stole from my family trust, Brenda, and now you're going to pay for it." With the security footage playing on a loop behind us, my mother knew she was backed into a corner. Eleanor's attorney didn't mince words. Brenda could either face immediate formal criminal prosecution for felony grand larceny, or she could sign an emergency restitution agreement to cover all legal expenses, bank fees, and financial penalties out of her own pocket. Defeated and terrified of spending her retirement years in a prison cell, my mother signed the documents with a trembling hand. To fulfill the debt, She was forced to liquidate her personal retirement savings and take out a heavy loan against her own home, wiping out the exact financial security she had tried to steal from me. The damage to Chloe's relationship was swift and permanent. Horrified by the sheer illegality and deceit that had surrounded her upcoming marriage, Marcus and his mother called off the extravagant wedding entirely. Marcus insisted on postponing any future plans indefinitely, making it clear that he would not marry into a family until Chloe went through extensive counseling and completely untangled herself from our mother's toxic, manipulative control. As for me, I stood up from that conference table, gathered my files, and looked at my mother one last time. For 27 years, I had allowed guilt to make me responsible for her chaos. But as I walked out of that office into the bright afternoon sun, I officially blocked her number and severed all financial and personal ties. I was finally free. 6 months have passed since that quiet afternoon in the attorney's office, and my life has transformed in ways I never thought possible. I moved into a sunlit apartment closer to my job, received a well-deserved promotion at work, and finally enjoy the complete peace of mind that comes with living on my own terms. Without my mother's constant manipulation hanging over our heads, Chloe has slowly begun to rebuild her life. She took a step back from the wedding chaos, started therapy, and found a job of her own. We speak occasionally now, not as the golden child and the scapegoat, but as two sisters learning how to build a healthy relationship from scratch. As for my mother, she lives quietly in her empty house, struggling to pay off the debts brought on by her own greed, a living reminder that actions always carry consequences. Standing up to family is never easy, especially when you've been trained your entire life to keep the peace. But setting firm boundaries didn't ruin my family. It simply revealed the truth that was hiding beneath the surface all along. Now, I'm curious about what you think. Would you have protected your mother from the police if she were in that situation? Or would you have let her face the legal consequences like I did? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the video on screen for another unbelievable story. Thanks for watching.